This is a story about the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we live out in the world, and the space between those two. It's about how we love, how we lose, and how we recover, or not, through the stories we make up in our heads. I'm Robin Rice, and this is also my story. Chapter 16. Diving In. At the end of the day, every compelling story is a yes story or a no story. For a time, you can get away with a maybe story or a wait-and-see story, but not for long. Life doesn't stand for it. The half-hearted will always get passed by in favor of the yeser and the knower. As a story author, you get to choose to create a protagonist, which is to say the central character of the story living out their yes or no truth, or a victim, someone lost to the story unfolding. Fate, if you will. What you can't create is a couch sitter who keeps couch sitting. There's no story in that story. I'm not saying there's not a place for stuck in the story. There is. Ask any woman giving birth how it feels when her entire body is crushing down on the new life, yet there is no opening for the baby to move through. Yet. That's as stuck gets. So yes, we also have stuck as a stage in our stories. But eventually that stuckness has to progress. The yet has to make a way for the yes or the no. To not progress is to risk the lives of both mother and baby. I'm also not talking about preferences, leanings, or inclinations. You may prefer a romance over a story of true crime, or vice versa. You may avoid substances or indulge, or choose lean meats over fatty ones. You may decide that red nails and lipstick are gorgeous or gauche and purchase accordingly. Whatever. These are technically yeses and nos, sure, and they do add up. But these add seasoning to life, catering to our flavor palette. They are not of the who we are sort. For a powerful, beautiful, moving life story, we must choose from the who we are yes and no categories whenever a true choice point is presented to us. One is not better than another. It's the strength of the choice, not the direction, that makes the difference. Yes, at its core, is a vote in the affirmative, a choice made, a road taken. Seems obvious. But no can be affirmative, too. A no is a hard stop, a firm put it down, or a solid never took it up in the first place. With all due respect to balance, flexibility, and shades of gray, a hard yes and a hard no make for better storytelling, in fiction and in real life. When we look at our life story, we can see where the hard yeses and the hard nos have presented themselves. If we are brave, we can choose to look for patterns and, in seeing them, gain the option of shoring up our wishy-washy ways. As for me, despite the crazy-making and often contradictory messages I was getting, my yes to the awakened life, whatever that meant, was so clear and strong, it didn't even seem to be a choice. It simply was. Yes, 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 please, was the feeling. Any and all parts of me that were holding out were told to shut up and get with the program. Somehow, they all did. Enter the labyrinth. Something in Rosalind's reading pushed me over the edge. She was too accurate for me to explain away how she knew what she knew. The others were too, but there was something in her connection that felt more real, useful. And she asked me to think about who I was and my role. Of course, I'd been thinking of all the things in total, but my role, the idea that I had one, that my gifts might have a reason for being, that I myself might have reason for being, besides that of being in my own little world. It sunk in. and I finally understood that I, too, was meant to be a giver of my gifts. I wasn't sure how, but I gave myself permission to start exploring in earnest. Since no one was good at everything, I reasoned that I didn't have to be either. But I did need to find what I excelled at. It was scary, yes, but Rosalind and all the others had jumped into the deep end of the otherworldly pool and been fine. I would be too, I told myself. It was only at this point that I realized how much I had resisted my gifts from the earliest age. I either denied them, vilified them, shoved them aside, or made excuses for them so as not to seem quite so bizarre, and thus I not so different. I wouldn't do that anymore. It was time to stop fooling around. I started with my intuition. I would begin training myself, but with clear, self-imposed guidelines and guardrails. First, I had to be accurate in order to be useful, and so that accuracy needed to be both repeatable and reliable. I would explore widely, but only follow what could meet that criteria. Second, I had to be honest about my results, because the last thing I wanted to be was a hustling shyster. No one else would need to believe in anything I accomplished, I decided, but I personally had to know clearly what was and was not a win, and my standards would be high. I would make mistakes, no doubt, but I would also be committed to learning from them. Somehow, that commitment made me feel safer, though I wasn't really sure why. With all that in mind, I started with two simple tools: my computer and an email account. To fully date me, this was back in the times when email was new and the term spam was for questionable food. Most of my email, at most 5 or 6 a day, was from someone I knew. Nearly everyone used one of two main email servers, and "You've got mail" was not yet a historical joke, let alone a movie. This was my plan: to discover if I could intuit what new email would show up in the morning before I turned my computer on. To practice, I would sit in front of my computer and open myself to feel for how much mail there would be waiting for me and whether or not I knew the people sending it. I wasn't sure what I was feeling for or where it might land when I felt it, but I didn't worry much about it. I figured I'd know or I would not know. That was a good enough start. For those emails that felt as if they were coming from someone I knew, I did not try to know who the sender was at first, but I did seek to feel if there was a sense of familiarity or not. I examined my intuition further. Did I feel the email contained good news, no significant news, or bad news? I scanned my gut for intuitive nudges and included how my overall body felt: happy, sad, bored, afraid, excited. I assumed a good email would make me feel good in advance, and a bad email bad in advance. Once I had a sense of what I expected, I turned on my computer to see if I was right. Or rather, at least at first, how wrong I was. In order to improve, when I got it wrong, I'd identify the most obvious reason I'd made the mistake. Wishful thinking was the culprit pretty much every time. I've always been an optimist, so wanting good news felt much the same as thinking it was there. But fear was sometimes at the forefront. What if I get an email from the tax man or a notice of a cancellation of an event I cared about? I learned to discern the feeling of a wish or a fear from an intuition, a nuance that serves me to this day. It was astonishing how fast I learned, and how easy it was once I got the hang of it. Each day, I became more accurate and more precise. My questions got better, too. I pre-asked if things were good, bad, very bad, or if I would find a mixed set of news, some good and some bad, or a little good and a lot of nothing much. Eventually, I got good at sensing who an email was from, but I disregarded that. It was too easy to guess, given I often knew who would be writing. As I got better, I tuned in for more detail. Would I feel good in my heart or my gut? My head or my nervous system? Would I buzz or tingle or feel nothing? Would I feel good but find that the feeling would not turn into anything much in the end? This took a longer-term approach, sometimes taking weeks to play out, so I kept a diary to keep track and keep myself honest. Where was the sensation most likely to occur in my body when I was accurate? Where did I think I sensed it when I was wrong? Most often, my head. How long did a feeling last if I was correct versus off target? Did big news have big feelings? Oddly, not always. Though important emails usually did come with a more urgent sensation. It wasn't anywhere near a scientific double-blind study, but it did allow me to get an honest look at my gifts and the style of tuning in that worked best for me. And at this point, it only had to work for me. I wasn't going to contaminate the experiment by telling anyone, so my failures couldn't hurt anyone. After a few months, I hit an annoying snag. My body started to feel important emails come in, as they came in, no matter the time of day or night, and no matter what I was doing. The more important, the stronger the feeling, and the stronger the urge to go turn on the computer to find out if I was right. Even when this happened at 2 a.m., I often could not help myself. I would get out of bed, slip downstairs to turn on the computer, and check, just in case. In this, I was always right, 100%. I took that as a clue to something, though I wasn't sure exactly what. I was proud of how my accuracy was growing, until the morning it all stopped. Completely. I immediately knew what had happened, but was perplexed as to why. The day before, I had changed my internet provider. I tuned into the emails that next morning and nothing. No feeling. I was as clueless as I had been the day I started training myself. Same the next morning and the next. No intuition, no nudges, no feeling. Definitely no middle-of-the-night wake-up calls. It made me wonder, what exactly had I been tuning into? And why did my internet provider matter? What kind of line had the information been traveling on? Why would the old provider work and the new one be a complete no-go? And from this, a new question emerged. If there were more than one line available, what if some lines were good and some not so good? How would I know? I might have found an answer by starting over with the new provider and comparing it to the old one, but by then, I couldn't be bothered. The training had given me enough of what I needed to take my intuition forward into other situations, ones that might matter more. When I found myself having trouble making a decision, I'd open my field of energy, a term I had heard, not really knowing what that meant or what I was doing, and I would ask myself, if this were coming through my old email inbox, would it feel like it was good news or bad news? I translated that into a yes or a no. Then I went further, a strong yes or a strong no. Also, did it feel familiar or not? In the same way that an email could be from someone I knew or not, the feeling of familiar had a vibe I could translate into feeling close and happy about the yes, or feeling distant or even repellent to the no. Eventually, I started closing my eyes and pretending I was standing at a real-world mailbox, complete with a red side flag in the up position, and then I would look to see what was inside. Again, I quickly became more and more accurate. Sometimes I'd feel something go off for no reason, in the same way an important email would come in the middle of the night and awaken me. At first, I assumed there was no reason to be on alert, only to repeatedly find there was, in fact, always a reason. I just hadn't gotten the information about it in the real world yet. Other times, the urge would be strong, but for no important reason. For example, one day I was driving to a friend's house to meet some other friends we both knew. When I arrived, something told me to bring in the CD I had been listening to in the car. I saw no reason to. I wasn't going to listen to it in her house, and promptly left it, locking the car door. The feeling was insistent, but I could not make sense of it, so I just went in. Not 5 minutes later, one of my friends asked me what the name of a song on that very CD was. But did I remember? Nope. I had to go get my car keys, go out, and get the CD to check. This wasn't earth-shattering news, which was also good information. Strong feelings and important news were not the same. The prodding to take in the CD wasn't important, but it was about to be needed very soon. I learned that proximity and timelines could mimic feelings of importance. Good to know. I also learned that most often an intuitive nudge would not make sense in a rational way. When I inquired of my inner guidance about this, I was told, "Why would you be nudged if you are already headed in the right direction? There would be no need. It's only when you're about to miss something in your rational thinking that your intuition will go off." It made sense, but it also meant it would always pit my rational mind against the intuitive thought. To become clear enough to be repeatable and reliable, this would take more practice. Often I inquired about who or what was telling me what I intuitively knew. Where or from whom did the idea or thought come from? Were there lines of energy that everything traveled on, and was that all that I was picking up on? If so, why would some lines work better than others? Could any line be learned? And was there any advantage to one over multiples? Even more of interest, was there a spirit or outside energy guiding me, like the I had met in my journeys? Or was that just projection, with it all coming from within me? If so, wasn't that just a deeper level of my own imagination? If coming from outside of me, was every voice to be trusted? That didn't seem wise. But then again, with all my wishful thinking and fears, I hoped it was an outside source. Even with my personal rules of engagement, it felt like the blind leading the blind. Actually, it was the blind leading the blind. I needed more data from real people that I could see and hear and touch. As it happened, there was a yearly New Age conference just an hour from home, put on by the same people who had published the newspaper I'd found that day with Terry. I asked her to go, but she wasn't available. I went anyway, by myself. Bravely, cautiously, earnestly. Booth after booth, more than 100, offered a cornucopia of goods and services. Psychic readers, gadgets that shook your chakras, a rainbow set of color therapy glasses, trips to ancient sacred sites, just about anything and far more than I'd ever considered. There was a main stage with speakers sharing everything from how to meet your spirit guide, at least I didn't need that one, to how insects and geckos were actually aliens. I appreciated the talks, but had come for direct in-person experiences. I'd brought enough cash to sign up for anyone and everyone who looked even remotely promising, so that's exactly what I did. It would take all day, but I had all day. The first woman I met said my life was a tornado that would last another 2 years. She got some specific details right, and my life was already in chaos, so it seemed reasonable to believe her. But 2 more years? I wasn't sure I could handle that. When I said so, she said that actually her estimate was conservative. I remember thinking it was the only conservative idea in the entire place. I went to get my aura diagnosed by a shy young man who was assigned to me. He kept putting his hands around my body about 6 inches away from my skin and shaking his head. Admitting to being a student, he asked if I minded if he talked to his instructor. He went away, then came back with a small Japanese woman, not more than 4.5 feet tall. She started feeling into the space around me about 6 inches in, as he had, but then moved further and further out until her hands were 3 feet away. "Her aura is big, that's all. You have to look further out when you meet a big spirit," she said, looking at me like I must have known, then walking away without saying anything more. But what did she mean, big spirit? What does that mean? I wanted to scream after her. What does that imply? What does it require? What's the goal, the result, the future of a big spirit? Someone please give me some clear answers, some kind of real direction. I'm trying to do this right. A big ego was the only thing I was sure I was getting, at least so far. I moved on to the next person, a psychic reader who didn't get anything right. Nothing at all. Okay, so there had to be duds. Fair enough. I let her keep the $20, even though she knew she didn't earn it. Next, an animal card reader who seemed to nail a strong suite of my personality patterns and personal problems, but then ended by assuring me that my great love was coming any day now. Heard that one, I thought, but did not say. A fairy-like woman promised she could see into the window of my soul through staring into my eyes. She looked deeply, earnestly, and said, "Oh, I know the problem." I would love to know, I said, not kidding. It's like you're a window that is completely clean, completely clear, except for 1 or 2 small spots. Focus on cleaning those spots and you will rapidly progress. Even 15 minutes of meditation a day, even 5, would help enormously and produce great results. 1 or 2 spots? Nice idea, but I had seen my window. It was crazy full of spots. In fact, they seemed to run into each other to become huge splotches. And meditation? I wasn't interested. Flat out, it held no appeal. Anyway, I couldn't have sat still for 5 minutes thinking of nothing if you'd paid me. I could fade off into the distance and be gone for hours. I could contemplate forever. But actually control my thoughts and gently let them come and go with my breath? No way. That was some other sleeping giant, I was sure. I signed up for a group mediumship reading, and in true Robin Rice fashion, the reader made a beeline for me first. "You've got so many dead people," she said. That I did. Dad didn't show up, nor Ricky or Nell, but my grandmother Dorothy was there. She was living high up in the light, the woman said, reminding me of what the medium said about Nell. My grandmother said she was glad I'd kept the small sugar bowl and creamer that I'd given to her after my first travels to Europe. They had sat in her kitchen windowsill, right above the sink, for many years. Dead on, that one. After, I took off to find a bathroom, but was held up when a half-dozen women dressed in all white walked down the hall toward me. I had not yet gotten to their booth, nor did I recognize any of them personally. But when we reached each other, instead of going around me, they all stopped and bowed at the waist in unison. Without thinking about it, I made a deep bow back. A connection was felt, at least by me, like an electrical charge. "Come see us," one of them said. I watched them walk past and continue down the hall, not bowing to anyone else. Such strangeness. I did go see them. They were healers, they said, and at this conference they were offering free upgrades to one of your organs. Upgrades? Organs? Like liver? Lungs? Energetic, they assured me. I had felt their energy, so it seemed plausible. Which organ? I asked. We don't know until we get in there and they tell us what to do. They again. How many times had others, and even I, used some generic they from the great beyond? It felt right, more than singular. But who were they, and were they always the same they, or different sets? What the hell? I was there. I lay on the table as the woman who had invited me moved about doing what? I don't know. My eyes were closed, as instructed, and I didn't feel anything. No special energy, no organs moving suddenly. When finished, she said she'd never done that before. She sounded both impressed and somewhat nervous. "What's that?" I asked, only a little alarmed, mostly because I didn't think any of my organs felt especially upgraded. "I changed all your organs to the new vibration at once. Here's my number in case you have trouble." Trouble? Like what kind? She said she didn't know, adding, "We did a lot." I didn't ask for a lot. But wait, she might just want more money now. I know this game. I asked what it cost. Nothing, she told me. If you come to see me again sometime, it's just an hourly rate. But today, this is our gift to you. You are here to change the world. Oh, that again. Robin the ego was thrilled with a recognition and affirmation. My other aspect warned me to stay humble, but it was getting harder and harder. In a world where I had largely been a nobody and firmly outside of the popularity pool, it was incredibly seductive. Exhausting my exploratory options, at least the ones that seemed remotely reasonable to try, I went home. It had been a long day and I was exhausted. The next few days, though, were, I do not exaggerate, nothing short of hell. Physically, emotionally, energetically, everythingly. I felt as if I'd been given some strange concoction of speed and Valium, plus something to send my body leaning sideways, sometimes to one side, sometimes to the other. I could not walk straight and went in and out of feeling like I was going to puke. At the end of the first day, I called the woman in white on the off chance that what she had done the day before was what was actually affecting me. She said she had no idea. That alone created a huge caution in me towards energy work of any kind going forward. I guess there was no choice but to ride it out. Important side note. Before I tell you the rest of this story, understand I do not suggest anyone adjust or quit any medication for any reason. Seriously, I have no medical experience and cannot advise anyone what to do or not do with any medication, including those that support mental illness. I can only share what happened to me. The second day of not feeling well, as I stood with my daily medication in my hand, something felt wrong about taking it. I'd been taking it religiously and gratefully for more than 8 years with only a 1-year break to have my second child. I'd been told I would need these pills for life, and I had accepted that truth. Again, gratefully, given how much pain there had been in my life before medication. Yet for some reason, on this day, I simply could not bring myself to put them in my mouth. There was no voice saying, "Stop your medication," or "You can do without them." I'd been warned about such things and was on the lookout. It was a clear inability to lift my hand. The physical stuff that was going on in my body felt like too much to handle already. I intuitively sensed my medication was going to exacerbate it. Maybe I need a day off, I thought. I'll take it tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. I never took or needed my medication again. After that weekend, I felt fine, good, steady. In the 25-plus years since, I have not had a single episode of rapid cycling bipolar disorder. Not one. In fact, I became one of the most mood-steady people I'd ever known. I have certainly had times when I have felt sadness, pain, and grief, but it has never been that cycle of up and down coming like clockwork as it had for so many years of my life. I don't know what caused it. Maybe the changing of organs, or the accumulation of a day among so many seers and healers, or if it was even the result of the weekend. Because when I thought about it, something had been shifting since the day I'd awakened. Maybe the weekend was just the tipping point of something already set to happen. To this day, I could not tell you. As days became weeks, became months, became years, the illness that had crippled my life from age 11 to 27, then required great medical management for another 8 years, proved itself to be gone. So, whatever was happening to my life, however crazy irrational it all seemed, and however much it made less and less sense in any rational way, my awakening also had real-world physical consequences that were good. For the first time in forever, despite the tornado that was swirling, I felt my life must have been headed in the right direction. Both aspects within me agreed. At least until someone or something from somewhere decided to show me another side of the consciousness coin. Enter your labyrinth at BeWhoYouAre.com.